The massive crystal chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with hundreds of different languages, all translating through neural implants into a cacophony of dismissive laughter. At the center of the circular amphitheater, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood perfectly still, her hands clasped behind her back, watching alien representatives from 12 different star systems mock her presentation. "Primitive scrap metal," wheezed Ambassador Kelvac, his tentacles writhing in what passed for amusement among the Zephyrian race. "The humans believe they can solve the destroyer crisis with, what did you call it? Recycled materials." The holographic display behind Sarah showed Earth's proposal, a defensive weapon system built entirely from salvaged materials, defunct satellites, and what the galactic community considered space junk. The technical specifications scrolled past in neat columns, but none of the alien delegates bothered to read them. "With respect, honored delegates," Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics, "our engineers have run extensive simulations." Simulations! The word exploded from Ambassador Thess, her crystalline form shimmering with colors that indicated deep skepticism. "The Christek Consortium has devoted 3 centuries to weapons research. Our finest minds have concluded that stopping the destroyers requires exotic matter manipulation and quantum cascade amplifiers. Yet you propose garbage?" More laughter rippled through the chamber. Sarah had expected this reaction, but it still stung. Earth had only been part of the galactic community for 50 years, and humanity's reputation for unconventional problem-solving was seen more as a curiosity than a genuine asset. The destroyers had appeared 6 months ago at the edge of the galaxy. Massive biomechanical ships that consumed entire star systems, converting matter into more of themselves. They moved slowly but inevitably toward the galactic core, and every advanced civilization's weapons had proven useless against their adaptive shielding. "Perhaps," said Chancellor Vortex, the acknowledged leader of the Council and one of the few beings present who had lived through multiple galactic crises, "the humans could explain their creative approach." Sarah stepped forward, activating the holographic controls with practiced ease. The display shifted to show Earth's orbital debris field, a glittering cloud of defunct satellites, old space stations, and the accumulated detritus of 2 centuries of space exploration. "What you see as waste, we see as resources," Sarah explained. "Every piece of this material has already been tested in the harsh environment of space. Our engineers propose collecting and repurposing these materials into a distributed defense network." "Absurd," snorted General Corax, his forearms crossing in a gesture of contempt. "My military strategists require precision-crafted weapons with tolerances measured in quantum increments. How could random debris possibly—" "Because it's not random," Sarah interrupted, her patience finally wearing thin. "Every bolt, every circuit board, every piece of metal in Earth's orbital field was designed and built by human engineers. We know exactly what each component can do, how it fails, and how to make it work again." She gestured, and the hologram zoomed in on a section of the debris field. Highlighted objects began connecting with thin lines, showing proposed modification patterns. "Our plan involves 3 key innovations. First, we use the existing orbital mechanics to create a self-positioning grid. Second, we retrofit communication systems to create a distributed computing network. Third, we weaponize the debris itself as kinetic projectiles while simultaneously using it as construction material for larger assemblies." Ambassador Kelvac's tentacles stopped writhing. "You intend to build your weapon from the materials you're planning to shoot at the enemy?" "Exactly," Sarah smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. "Maximum efficiency, minimum waste." The chamber fell quiet for several long moments. Chancellor Vortex leaned forward, his ancient eyes studying the human ambassador with newfound interest. "Even if such a design were theoretically possible," he said slowly, "the construction timeline would be impossible. The destroyers will reach the outer colonies in 18 months. Our most optimistic estimates for building a conventional defense grid require at least 5 years. Sarah's smile widened. "Chancellor, with respect, you're thinking like engineers who have unlimited resources and time to spare. Human engineers learn to work with what we have when we have it. Our entire industrial base was built from salvage and recycled materials. We've been preparing for this kind of challenge for centuries without even knowing it." The hologram shifted again, showing a timeline with construction phases broken down into parallel streams of work: salvage operations, component sorting, modification protocols and assembly sequences all running simultaneously across Earth's orbital space. 6 months, Sarah announced. We can have a working prototype protecting Earth in 6 months, and a full defensive grid covering the outer colonies in 12. The laughter that greeted this statement was different from before, less dismissive and more nervous. Several delegates began whispering among themselves, their translation implants creating a low buzz of concerned conversation. And if you fail? Asked Ambassador Thys, her crystalline form flickering with more subdued colors. Sarah looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes, optical sensors, and sensory organs of dozens of alien species. These beings represented civilizations millions of years older than humanity, with technologies that seemed like magic to most humans. But for all their advancement, they had been stopped by the destroyer crisis. Then we fail quickly and cheaply, she said simply. But if we succeed, we'll have shown the galaxy something important about resourcefulness. Chancellor Vortex stood slowly, his ancient frame unfolding with deliberate dignity. The Council will take your proposal under consideration. However, I must point out that if Earth proceeds with this plan and fails, the resources lost could be substantial. Chancellor, Sarah replied, the resources we're proposing to use are already considered worthless by galactic standards. We're not asking for exotic materials or advanced technology. We're asking for permission to use our own garbage to defend ourselves and others. As the session ended and delegates began filing out of the chamber, Sarah heard fragments of conversations in dozens of languages. The tone had shifted from mockery to cautious curiosity, though skepticism remained strong. Walking back to her quarters in the council station, Sarah activated her personal communicator. The signal would take hours to reach Earth, but she knew her message would be worth the wait. Control, this is Ambassador Chen. The Council has received our proposal. Begin Phase 1 salvage operations immediately. It's time to show the galaxy what human engineers can do with a little imagination and a lot of scrap metal. Behind her, the lights of the council chamber dimmed as the session officially ended. In 18 months, the destroyers would reach the outer colonies. In 6 months, Earth's engineers would either prove that humanity's unconventional approach could save the galaxy, or demonstrate that even human ingenuity had its limits. The stakes had never been higher, and the odds had never been longer. But for the first time since the destroyer crisis began, someone was offering a solution that didn't require resources the galaxy didn't have, or time they couldn't spare. Now it was up to Earth's engineers to make good on their ambassador's bold promises. Director Martinez floated in the observation bubble of Salvage Station Alpha, watching hundreds of modified cargo haulers drift through Earth's orbital graveyard like mechanical vultures. The sight should have been depressing, but instead it filled him with the kind of excited energy he hadn't felt since his early days as a junior engineer. Status report, Jensen, he called to his chief operations coordinator, who was managing the salvage operation from a bank of holographic displays. 67% of priority targets acquired, Jensen replied, his fingers dancing across virtual controls as he directed another hauler toward a cluster of defunct communication satellites. The old Prometheus station superstructure is proving tricky, but Team 7 thinks they can section it without compromising the useful materials. Martinez nodded, studying the real-time inventory displays that tracked every piece of salvaged material. In the 3 weeks since Ambassador Chen's presentation to the Galactic Council, Earth's engineering corps had mobilized with a speed that surprised even their own government. The key to their rapid response lay in something the alien civilizations couldn't understand: human experience with scarcity. While other species had developed their technologies in resource-rich environments, humanity had learned to innovate within strict limitations. Every human engineer had grown up solving problems with insufficient materials, inadequate time, and impossible requirements. Director, called Dr. Sarah Kim from the analysis station, we're seeing some interesting patterns in the material composition. The satellite clusters from the 21 and 50s era have a higher percentage of refined titanium-aluminum composites than we expected. Good or bad? Martinez asked, pushing off from the observation window to drift toward her station. Very good. Those composites were over-engineered for their original purpose. We can repurpose them for structural elements that need to withstand much higher stress loads than anything they were originally designed for. This was exactly the kind of discovery that made the scrap-based approach viable. Unlike manufactured components designed for specific purposes, salvaged materials often had capabilities that exceeded their original requirements. Human engineers had learned to identify and exploit these hidden strengths. The communication system crackled with updates from salvage teams throughout the orbital field. Team 3 had successfully extracted the fusion reactors from an old research station. Team 12 was reporting success with recovering intact sensor arrays from a decommissioned early warning network. Team 5 had found something unexpected. Command, this is Team 5. We've got something weird here. It's a cargo container from the old Luna Mars freight run, but the manifest doesn't match what's inside. Martinez activated his microphone. Define weird, Team 5. Well, sir, the manifest says industrial lubricants and basic electronics. What we're actually finding is about 3 tons of military-grade computational cores and what looks like prototype quantum entanglement communicators. Jensen whistled softly. That's 20-year-old hardware that's still classified as advanced technology by galactic standards. Probably a smuggling operation that never got completed, Martinez mused. Team 5, secure everything and bring it to Analysis Bay 7. Dr. Kim, add quantum communication capability to our design options. This discovery highlighted another advantage of the scrap-based approach. Earth's orbital field contained not just official debris, but also the remnants of countless private ventures, failed experiments, and yes, probably illegal operations. The accumulated technological diversity was far greater than any planned inventory could provide. The next challenge came from an unexpected source. The communication board lit up with an incoming priority message from Earth's surface, specifically from the Global Engineering Council. Director Martinez, this is Administrator Walsh. We've got a problem. Martinez sighed. He'd been expecting political interference, but had hoped for more time before it materialized. What kind of problem, Administrator? The kind where 3 different galactic civilizations have formally requested detailed technical specifications for your project. They're claiming that human debris poses a navigation hazard to their shipping routes, and they want to ensure our modifications don't make the problem worse. Sir, with respect, that's absolute nonsense. The shipping routes have been established around the debris field for decades, and we're reducing the total volume of orbital materials, not increasing it. I know that, Director, you know that. But Ambassador Chen is reporting that the real issue is political. Some council members are getting nervous about humanity building any kind of weapon system, even a defensive one. Martinez felt his excitement cooling into frustration. This was exactly the kind of bureaucratic obstacle that had prevented previous breakthrough projects from reaching completion. Administrator, if we have to document every component modification for galactic review, we'll miss our construction deadline by months. The destroyers won't wait for paperwork. Understood. Here's what we're going to do. Continue construction as planned, but start parallel documentation. I'm authorizing Dr. Elizabeth Harper's team to create a simplified overview that satisfies galactic curiosity without revealing sensitive technical details. Dr. Harper was Earth's foremost expert in cross-species communication and had developed the protocols that made human-alien technical exchanges possible. If anyone could thread the needle between transparency and security, it would be her. Copy that, Administrator. We'll keep building while Dr. Harper keeps the politicians happy. The conversation ended, but it highlighted a crucial challenge. Earth's engineers were racing against time to build a defensive system, but they were also operating under the scrutiny of civilizations that viewed human unpredictability with deep suspicion. Director, Jensen called from his station, we've got an update from the design team. They want to show you something. The central display shifted to show a 3-dimensional model of the proposed defense grid, instead of the traditional geometric patterns favored by galactic military engineers. The human design looked organic, almost chaotic. Clusters of repurposed materials connected by flexible linkages that could adapt to different configurations as needed. It's beautiful, Dr. Kim breathed. And completely unpredictable. That was exactly the point. Traditional galactic weapons systems followed logical, predictable patterns that the destroyers had proven capable of analyzing and countering. The human approach embraced controlled chaos, using the natural irregularities of salvaged materials to create a system that couldn't be easily categorized or predicted. Chief Engineer Rodriguez joined the conversation via hologram from the main construction facility. Director, we've successfully tested the first component cluster. 7 salvaged communication satellites, 4 defunct cargo pods, and 1 old mining platform, all linked with our new adaptive control system. How does it perform? Better than projected. The irregular mass distribution actually improves targeting accuracy because it creates multiple gravitational anchoring points. And the mixed technology integration is generating computational capabilities we didn't expect. This was the moment Martinez had been waiting for. Proof that the theoretical design could become functional reality. Rodriguez, I want you to scale the test up. Use the materials from this morning's salvage run and build a 10-component cluster. If that works, we move to Phase 2 construction. Understood, Director. One question, though. The galactic observers are requesting real-time access to our test data. How much do we share? Martinez considered the question carefully. Transparency would build trust with the Galactic Council, but it would also reveal human engineering techniques that could be valuable in future conflicts. Share performance data, but not construction methodology. They can see what our system does, but not how we built it. As the workday continued, Martinez found himself reflecting on the broader implications of their project. Humanity was attempting something that more advanced civilizations had declared impossible, using methods that those same civilizations considered primitive. But human engineers had always specialized in making impossible things work with inadequate resources. Whether it was the Apollo missions built with 1960s technology, or the early space stations assembled from components that were never designed to work together, humanity's greatest engineering achievements had always been acts of controlled desperation. The destroyer crisis was just the latest impossible challenge requiring an improbable solution. And if Earth's engineers succeeded, they would prove that sometimes the best answer to an advanced problem wasn't more advanced technology, but more creative thinking applied to whatever materials were available. Looking out at the salvage operation, watching human ingenuity transform space junk into humanity's hope for survival, Martinez allowed himself a moment of optimism. The galaxy had learned to fear the destroyers because they seemed unstoppable. But the galaxy had never seen what human engineers could accomplish when properly motivated. Construction Bay Gamma, as Chief Engineer Rosa Delgado, floated between massive sections of repurposed space station hull, checking connections that existed nowhere in any official engineering manual. Around her, teams of engineers and technicians worked with a mixture of cutting-edge fabrication tools and basic hand tools that would have looked familiar to mechanics from centuries past. Delgado, "We've got a problem with Section 12, called Engineer Patel from across the bay. His voice carried the particular stress pattern that indicated a technical challenge rather than a disaster, which was good news. Rosa pushed off from a support beam and glided over to where Patel was examining a junction where 3 different salvaged components were supposed to connect. The pieces came from different eras of space technology, with incompatible connection standards and wildly different material compositions. "Show me what we're dealing with," Rosa said, activating her diagnostic scanner. The communication array from the old research station uses quantum-aligned coupling ports, but the power distribution hub from the cargo platform still has mechanical connection points, and this structural beam from the mining operation is too thick for either connection standard. Rosa studied the problem, her engineer's mind automatically cycling through potential solutions. This was exactly the kind of challenge that had made the galactic civilizations dismiss Earth's proposal as impossible. How could you build a functional weapon system when the components weren't designed to work together? "Have you tried a hybrid interface?" she asked. "That was my first thought, but the power transmission rates are completely different. The quantum system operates at 2.7 terawatts per cubic meter, while the mechanical system peaks at 0.3 terawatts per cubic meter." Rosa grinned. This was the kind of problem that separated human engineers from their alien counterparts. Where other species saw incompatible systems, humans saw creative opportunities. "Patel, you're thinking like the systems are supposed to be identical. What if we treat the power differential as a feature instead of a bug?" She activated her portable design interface, sketching modifications in real-time holography. "We use the quantum system for primary power distribution and the mechanical system for backup and overflow. The mining beam becomes a structural, capacitor that stores excess energy and provides emergency power during combat operations. Patel's expression shifted from frustration to excitement as he followed Rosa's reasoning. So instead of trying to make three incompatible systems work the same way, we make them work differently but cooperatively. Exactly. The destroyers adapt to consistent patterns, but they'll have trouble analyzing a system where every component cluster operates on different principles. This approach exemplified the core philosophy behind Earth's defensive grid. Instead of building identical standardized components like traditional galactic military systems, human engineers were creating a network of unique hybrid assemblies that shared common functions but achieved them through completely different methods. The communication system buzzed with updates from other construction bays. Bay Alpha was reporting success with a cluster that combined tourist shuttle engines, scientific research sensors, and cargo container armor plating into a mobile weapons platform. Bay Beta had created a stationary fortress from old space station sections that could manufacture ammunition from raw asteroid material. Most impressively, Bay Delta had achieved something that violated several established principles of galactic engineering. They had successfully integrated technology from 7 different alien civilizations with human modifications, creating a component cluster that performed better than the sum of its parts. Chief Delgado, came a call from the observation deck. Director Martinez wants to see you in conference room 3, Priority Alpha. Rosa secured her tools and pushed off toward the conference area, wondering what crisis required immediate attention. The construction project was proceeding ahead of schedule, but that success was creating new problems as rapidly as it solved existing ones. Conference room 3 contained a holographic display showing real-time reports from across the construction network. Director Martinez stood in front of the display alongside Dr. Harper, the cross-species communication specialist, and Commander Singh from Earth's Space Defense Force. Rosa, we need your expertise on a delicate situation, Martinez began without preamble. The Zephyrian engineering delegation wants to inspect our construction methods. Rosa felt her stomach tighten. The Zephyrians were notorious perfectionist engineers who built everything to precise specifications, with minimal tolerances for variation. They would view human engineering methods as chaotic and dangerous. How much do they want to see? She asked. Dr. Harper consulted her notes. They're specifically interested in our adaptive integration protocols and our cross-platform compatibility solutions. Apparently, their preliminary analysis of our test data suggests we're achieving impossible efficiency rates. That's because we are, Rosa replied. We're getting efficiency gains that their theoretical models say shouldn't exist. Commander Singh leaned forward. Explain that for those of us who aren't engineers. Rosa activated the holographic display, showing a comparison between traditional galactic engineering approaches and human modifications. Standard galactic practice is to build components with precise specifications that ensure perfect compatibility. Every bolt, every circuit, every connection point is manufactured to exact standards. She highlighted several sections of the human construction. We're taking components that were never meant to work together and finding ways to make them not just compatible, but synergistic. A communication array designed for peaceful research becomes part of a weapons targeting system. Cargo container armor becomes structural support and radiation shielding. Tourist shuttle engines become emergency power sources. And this violates their engineering principles? Martinez asked. It violates their engineering reality, Dr. Harper interjected. Zephyrian engineers spend decades calculating optimal configurations before building anything. The idea that you can take random components and achieve superior performance through improvisation is literally incomprehensible to them. Rosa understood the political implications immediately. If the Zephyrians concluded that human engineering methods were fundamentally unsound, they could convince the Galactic Council to halt the project entirely. What do you need from me? She asked. A demonstration that shows our methods working without revealing exactly how we make them work, Martinez replied. Can you create a test scenario that satisfies their curiosity while protecting our technical advantages? Rosa considered the challenge. Zephyrian engineers thought in terms of mathematical perfection and logical consistency. They would need to see proof that human methods produced reliable results, but they wouldn't understand the intuitive creativity that made those methods possible. I can do better than that, she said finally. I can give them a controlled collaboration opportunity. The others looked intrigued, so Rosa continued. We invite them to work with us on a single component cluster, using their methods alongside ours. They provide some standardized components built to their specifications, and we integrate them with our salvage materials using human techniques. That could backfire spectacularly, Commander Singh warned. If the integration fails, we lose credibility with the entire Galactic Council. But if it succeeds, Dr. Harper added thoughtfully, we demonstrate that human engineering methods can enhance even perfectly designed alien technology. Martinez made the decision quickly. Set it up, Rosa, but choose your salvaged components carefully. We need this demonstration to succeed beyond any possible doubt. 3 days later, Rosa found herself in Construction Bay Epsilon with a delegation of 6 Zephyrian engineers, each one a specialist in precise component integration. Their leader, Engineer Thylex, examined the human workspace with barely concealed horror. These connection methodologies appear completely random, Thylex observed, his tentacles twitching with nervous energy as he studied a typical human component cluster. They're not random, Rosa replied calmly. They're adaptive. Each connection is optimized for the specific characteristics of the components being joined, rather than following a universal standard. The Zephyrians had brought 3 components built to their exacting standards: a power distribution node, a sensor array, and a communication relay. Each piece was a masterwork of precision engineering, designed to interface perfectly with other Zephyrian technology. Rosa's team had selected their salvaged materials equally carefully: sections from an old agricultural processing station, a defunct weather monitoring satellite, and structural elements from a failed mining operation. To Zephyrian eyes, the human components looked like junk. We'll create a hybrid cluster, Rosa explained. Your components will provide the core functionality, and our salvaged materials will provide structural support, emergency backup systems, and adaptive capabilities. The construction process that followed challenged every assumption the Zephyrian engineers held about proper technical procedures. Where they expected precise measurements, human engineers made adjustments based on visual inspection and tactile feedback. Where they expected standardized tools, humans used improvised instruments created for specific tasks. Communication channel on Salvage Station Alpha at hours, dragging Director Martinez from a fitful sleep. The message was brief and terrifying. Cascade failure in primary test grid. All hands to emergency stations. Martinez pulled on his emergency suit while running toward the command center, his mind racing through the possible disasters that could trigger a cascade failure. The primary test grid contained 47 component clusters representing 2 months of intensive construction work, and more importantly, it was scheduled for final integration. Testing in 6 hours. The command center buzzed with controlled chaos as teams of engineers worked frantically at holographic displays showing real-time system diagnostics. Chief Engineer Delgado floated near the main display, her face grim as she traced failure patterns spreading through the test grid like a virus. Give me the situation. Rosa! Martinez called as he anchored himself to a nearby console. We lost Cluster 23 at ZO341 hours, Rosa replied without looking away from her displays. What should have been a localized power surge somehow propagated through our backup systems and started triggering sympathy failures in connected clusters. The main display showed the test grid as a 3-dimensional web of interconnected components, with failed clusters appearing as red nodes and at-risk clusters flickering between yellow and orange warning states. As Martinez watched, another cluster shifted from yellow to red. How many clusters have we lost? He asked, dreading the answer. 14 confirmed failures, 12 more showing critical instability, reported Engineer Kim from the diagnostic station. If the cascade continues at this rate, we'll lose the entire test grid within 3 hours. This was exactly the kind of catastrophic failure that galactic engineers had predicted when they dismissed Earth's unconventional approach. Traditional galactic systems were designed with multiple redundancies and isolation protocols that prevented single failures from spreading. The human grid's adaptive interconnectivity, which provided its tactical advantages, also created vulnerabilities that hadn't appeared in smaller-scale testing. What triggered the initial failure? Martinez demanded. Rosa's expression became even grimmer. Cluster 23 was one of our most ambitious hybrid assemblies. We integrated a commercial fusion reactor with military-grade defensive systems and civilian communication arrays. The integration appeared stable during individual testing, but when we brought the cluster online with the full grid, something went wrong with the power management protocols. Engineer Patel joined the conversation from his station across the command center. "Director, I think I know what happened. The civilian communication system was designed to draw power in steady, predictable patterns. But when it interfaced with the military defensive grid, it started receiving combat priority power allocations that exceeded its safe operating parameters. So the civilian system overloaded and took out the military systems?" Martinez asked. "Worse than that. The overload created feedback loops that propagated through our adaptive network connections. Every cluster that tried to compensate for Cluster 23's failure ended up stressing its own systems beyond safe limits. This was a nightmare scenario. The adaptive network that made their defense grid unpredictable and resilient had become a pathway for failure propagation. Traditional galactic engineers would shut down the entire system, spend months analyzing the failure modes, and redesign everything from scratch with proper isolation protocols. But humanity didn't have months to spare. The destroyers were still advancing toward the outer colonies, and Earth's defense grid represented the only hope for stopping them. More importantly, shutting down and starting over would vindicate every alien engineer who had dismissed human methods as dangerously primitive. "Options?" Martinez asked the room. "We could implement isolation protocols and restart with a more conservative design," suggested Dr. Kim. "It would take about 6 weeks to redesign the network architecture. Or we could abandon the adaptive network concept entirely and build individual defense platforms," added Commander Singh, who had arrived during the crisis briefing. "Less capability, but much more stability." Rosa had remained silent during these suggestions, but Martinez could see her mind working through the problem with the focused intensity that had made her Earth's top salvage engineer. "Rosa, what are you thinking?" he asked. "I'm thinking that we're approaching this like the cascade failure is a design flaw instead of a design opportunity," she replied slowly. "What if we don't try to prevent cascade effects? What if we learn to control them?" The room fell silent as the implications of her suggestion became clear. Instead of fighting against the system's tendency toward cascade effects, she was proposing to weaponize that tendency. "Explain," Martinez ordered. Rosa activated a secondary holographic display, showing a theoretical model of the defense grid with modified connection protocols. "Right now, cascade failures are unpredictable and destructive because they're accidental. But what if we design intentional cascade effects that can be triggered and controlled?" She highlighted sections of the theoretical grid. "We modify our component clusters to include controlled failure modes. When the system detects an incoming attack, instead of trying to absorb or deflect the energy, we trigger controlled cascade effects that redirect the attack energy into our own weapon systems." Engineer Patel's eyes widened as he followed Rosa's logic. "You're talking about turning the defense grid into a massive energy redistribution network. Enemy attacks wouldn't damage us. They'd power up our counterattacks." "Exactly. The destroyers have proven they can adapt to conventional defense systems because those systems are predictable. But how do you adapt to a defense system that becomes more dangerous when you attack it?" Martinez felt the familiar rush of excitement that came with recognizing a breakthrough concept. Rosa wasn't proposing to fix the problem. She was proposing to transform the problem into a solution. "What would we need to make this work?" he asked. "First, we need to redesign our component clusters to include controlled failure modes that redirect energy instead of absorbing it," Rosa explained. "Second, we need a central coordination system that can trigger and guide cascade effects in real time. Third, we need to completely rethink our testing protocols because we'll be intentionally creating unstable conditions." Dr. Kim looked troubled. "Rosa, this approach would make our defense grid inherently unstable. Any miscalculation could trigger accidental cascade effects that destroy our own systems." "Not unstable," Rosa corrected. "Dynamically stable. Like a juggler keeping multiple objects in motion. The system maintains its overall stability through constant controlled instability." Commander Singh frowned. "That sounds like a recipe for disaster. What happens if the coordination system fails?" "Then we revert to manual control," Rosa replied. "Human operators take direct control of individual clusters and manage cascade effects. through distributed decision-making. This suggestion highlighted a crucial difference between human and alien approaches to system design. Galactic civilizations preferred automated systems that could operate without direct biological intervention, viewing biological control as a source of unpredictable errors. But humans had learned to treat biological creativity and intuition as system features rather than bugs. How long would it take to implement these modifications? Martinez asked. Rosa consulted her portable design interface, running quick calculations. If we work around the clock and repurpose the failed clusters as test platforms, we could have a proof of concept ready in 72 hours. And if the proof of concept fails? Then we'll have learned something valuable about controlled cascade effects, and we'll try a different approach. Martinez looked around the command center, seeing expressions that ranged from excited anticipation to deep concern. This was the moment that would define Earth's approach to the destroyer crisis. They could play it safe and implement conventional solutions that might work, but offered no particular advantages, or they could double down on the unconventional approach that had brought them this far. Do it, he decided, but I want continuous monitoring and multiple abort protocols. If this approach starts showing signs of uncontrolled instability, we shut it down immediately. The next 72 hours became a blur of intense engineering work as teams throughout the construction network modified their designs to incorporate controlled cascade effects. Failed component clusters were stripped down and rebuilt with new connection protocols that could redirect energy instead of simply conducting it. The central coordination system presented its own challenges. Traditional galactic computers operated on logical algorithms that processed information in predictable patterns. But controlling cascade effects required a system that could make intuitive leaps and creative decisions in real time. The solution came from an unexpected source: the gaming industry. Earth's entertainment systems had developed sophisticated artificial intelligence networks designed to create unpredictable but engaging gameplay experiences. These systems specialized in managing complex dynamic situations where the optimal response couldn't be calculated in advance. By the end of the third day, the modified test grid was ready for activation. The rebuilt clusters looked different from their predecessors, with additional connection points and modified energy. Anything the engineers had heard before. Instead of the steady, predictable tones of conventional galactic technology, the controlled cascade system produced a complex harmony that shifted and evolved as power flowed through its network of salvaged components. Initial activation successful, reported Engineer Kim, her voice tight with concentration as she monitored dozens of system parameters simultaneously, all clusters showing stable power flow, coordination system responsive, safety protocols active. Director Martinez watched the main holographic display, which showed the test grid as a living web of energy connections. Unlike traditional systems that maintained static configurations, the controlled cascade network constantly adjusted its internal connections, creating and breaking links as the coordination AI optimized for changing conditions. Begin test phase 1, he ordered. Low-level stress simulation. The test protocol called for gradually increasing artificial loads on individual clusters to simulate combat conditions. In a conventional system, each cluster would either handle the load independently or fail independently, but the controlled cascade design was intended to distribute stress across the entire network, using failure as a tool rather than an outcome. Engineer Patel activated the first stress test, directing additional power demand toward Cluster 7, a hybrid assembly built from obsolete mining equipment and decommissioned research sensors. On the display, the cluster's indicator shifted from green to yellow as it approached its designed capacity limits. Cluster 7 reaching threshold, Patel announced. Coordination system should trigger cascade response in 3, 2, 1. The network responded exactly as Rose's theories had predicted. Instead of Cluster 7 simply overloading and failing, the coordination system detected the approaching failure state and triggered a controlled cascade that redistributed the excess load across 17 other clusters. The process happened so quickly that the human operators could barely follow it. But the result was clear. Cluster 7 returned to stable operation while the network as a whole absorbed the additional load without strain. Beautiful, breathed Rosa, watching the cascade effects ripple through the display like waves in a complex fluid. The system isn't just redistributing load, It's optimizing the entire network configuration in real time. But Martinez noticed something that concerned him. Why did the cascade involve 17 clusters instead of just the nearest neighbors? Rosa checked her diagnostics. The coordination system determined that the optimal load distribution required specific combinations of component types. Some clusters that were physically distant were logically closer in terms of power compatibility. This revealed an unexpected sophistication in the AI's decision-making process. The gaming industry algorithms they had repurposed weren't just managing cascade effects. They were discovering emergent properties in the network that human engineers hadn't anticipated. Begin test phase 2, Martinez ordered. Multiple simultaneous stress points. This test would push the system beyond anything they could expect in actual combat. Patel activated stress loads on 5 clusters simultaneously, each one demanding power levels that would normally cause immediate failure. The coordination system's response was mesmerizing. Instead of simple load redistribution, it triggered multiple cascade effects that interacted with each other in complex patterns. Clusters that had been passive observers in the first test suddenly became active participants, creating temporary high-capacity connections that existed for seconds or minutes before dissolving back into the baseline network. Director, we're seeing something remarkable here, Dr. Kim called from her analysis station. The network isn't just handling the stress loads, it's actually improving its own efficiency during the cascade events. She highlighted sections of the performance data. During cascade events, the coordination system is identifying and eliminating inefficiencies in the normal network configuration. It's using artificial stress to optimize itself. This was completely unprecedented in galactic engineering. Traditional systems were designed to operate at fixed efficiency levels, with redundancy built in to handle failure modes. But the controlled cascade network was demonstrating the ability to become more capable under stress, using artificial crisis as a tool for continuous improvement. Begin test phase 3, Martinez ordered, knowing that this next test would either validate their approach completely or reveal fundamental flaws that made it too dangerous to deploy. Phase 3 involved simulating actual destroyer weapon signatures based on data collected from previous encounters. The test protocol would subject the network to energy patterns specifically, designed to overwhelm and destroy conventional defensive systems. The simulated destroyer attack began as a focused beam of exotic energy directed at Cluster 12, an assembly of agricultural processing units and weather monitoring equipment that had no business surviving military-grade assault. Under normal circumstances, Cluster 12 would have been vaporized instantly. Instead, the coordination system detected the incoming attack pattern and triggered the most complex cascade effect they had yet observed. The exotic energy that should have destroyed Cluster 12 was instead captured and redirected through a cascade path that involved 34 different clusters, each one adding its own modifications to the energy flow. By the time the energy completed its journey through the cascade network, it had been transformed from a destructive weapon into a high-powered scanning beam that provided detailed analysis of the simulated attack source. The system just turned a destroyer weapon into our own reconnaissance tool, Rosa announced, her voice filled with awe. But the cascade effects weren't finished. The coordination system had learned something from analyzing the simulated destroyer attack, and it began implementing modifications to the network configuration that would make it more resistant to similar attacks in the future. It's adapting, Dr. Kim observed. The network is using enemy attack data to improve its own defenses in real time. Commander Singh, who had been skeptical of the controlled cascade approach from the beginning, stared at the display with a mixture of amazement and concern. This system is exhibiting behaviors we never programmed into it. Are we sure we can control it? Rosa considered the question carefully. We're not controlling it in the traditional sense. We're guiding it. The coordination system is making its own decisions about how to implement our strategic objectives. That could be dangerous if its decisions don't align with our intentions, Singh pointed out. But it could be invaluable if its decisions are better than our intentions, Martinez replied. Let's find out. Begin test phase 4. Phase 4 was the ultimate test. A full-scale simulation of coordinated destroyer attacks using every known weapon pattern in the galactic database. If the controlled cascade system could handle this level of assault, it would be ready for actual deployment. The simulation began with 3 simultaneous attacks from different directions, each one using a different destroyer weapon type. The exotic energy beams, gravitational distortion fields, and quantum disruption waves that had proven unstoppable against conventional defenses converged on the test grid from multiple angles. The coordination systems response was unlike anything in galactic military history. Instead of trying to block or deflect the attacks, it triggered a cascade pattern that caused the network to reconfigure itself into an entirely new topology within seconds. Components that had been passive structural elements became active weapons platforms. Communication arrays became power distribution nodes. Mining equipment became sensor networks. The incoming destroyer attacks were absorbed, analyzed, and transformed into counterattacks that were launched back toward the simulated enemy positions with greater power and accuracy than the original weapons. The system just demonstrated tactical creativity, Commander Singh announced, his skepticism completely replaced by professional admiration. It didn't just repel the attack. It turned the attack into ammunition for its own weapons. But the most remarkable discovery came during the post-test analysis. Dr. Kim had been monitoring the network's learning algorithms throughout the simulation, and what she found challenged every assumption about artificial intelligence capabilities. The coordination system didn't just learn to counter the specific attacks we simulated, she reported. It extrapolated general principles from the attack patterns and developed defensive strategies for weapon types that don't exist yet. Rosa studied the data in fascination. The system is anticipating future destroyer adaptations and preparing countermeasures for weapons they haven't built yet. This capability meant that the controlled cascade network wouldn't just match the destroyer's current capabilities, it would potentially stay ahead of their evolutionary adaptations. Where conventional defenses became obsolete as soon as the destroyers learned to counter them, the cascade system would continue evolving and improving. "Director," called Engineer Patel from the communication station, "we're receiving priority messages from the Galactic Council. They want immediate status reports on our testing progress." Martinez felt a moment of concern. The controlled cascade system had exceeded every expectation, but its capabilities might seem too advanced, too unpredictable for galactic comfort. Some council members were already detected them first. 3 massive biomechanical shapes emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the system, their dark hulls absorbing starlight like hungry voids. The destroyers had arrived 18 months ahead of schedule, catching the outer colonies completely unprepared. Admiral Sarah Chen, newly promoted from her ambassadorial role, stood in the command center of Earth Defense Station Omega, watching real-time tactical displays that showed the approaching threat. The destroyers moved with the inexorable patience of geological forces, each one the size of a small moon and bristling with weapons that had devastated a dozen star systems. "Distance to primary targets?" she asked her tactical officer. "Destroyers will reach the outer colony worlds in 47 hours at current velocity," Lieutenant Commander Park replied. "The evacuation fleets can save maybe 30% of the population if we're lucky." Chen felt the weight of 2 billion lives pressing down on her shoulders. Earth's controlled cascade defense grid was operational, but it had never been tested against actual destroyers. All their simulations and theoretical models meant nothing if they had miscalculated the true capabilities of humanity's ancient enemy. "Status of the defense grid?" she queried. "All 847 component clusters online and responsive," reported Chief Engineer Delgado, whose expertise had been transferred to the command station for the actual deployment. "Coordination system shows green across all networks. The grid is ready for combat operations." The defense grid that humanity had built from salvaged materials now stretched across 3 astronomical units of space, a vast web of interconnected clusters that appeared chaotic to outside observers, but followed complex organizational principles that human engineers understood intuitively. Each cluster was unique, built from different combinations of salvaged components, making the overall network impossible to analyze using conventional tactical algorithms. "Admiral," called the communications officer, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council. They're demanding immediate status updates on our defensive preparations." Chen felt a moment of bitter irony. For months, the Council had questioned humanity's unconventional approach to the destroyer crisis. Now, with the enemy literally approaching, They suddenly wanted to know if Earth's primitive methods could actually work. Tell the Council that Earth's defenses are operational and that we'll provide detailed reports after the engagement, she replied. Right now we have more immediate concerns. The tactical display updated as long-range sensors provided better resolution of the approaching destroyers. Each biomechanical ship showed the characteristic organic architecture that had baffled galactic scientists for decades. Hulls that seemed to grow rather than being built. Weapons systems that adapted their configuration based on enemy responses, and propulsion methods that violated several known laws of physics. Admiral, the lead destroyer is altering course, Lieutenant Commander Park announced. It's moving toward the Kepler 442 system faster than projected. Chen studied the updated projections with growing concern. If the destroyers reached the colonies before the defense grid could engage them, millions of people would die regardless of how effective humanity's weapons proved to be. How long until the first destroyer enters our engagement range? She asked. Rosa consulted her tactical displays. 16 hours until we can target the lead ship with our outer perimeter clusters. But Admiral, we should consider beginning cascade preparation earlier. This was the crucial decision that would determine the battle's outcome. The controlled cascade system needed time to optimize its configuration for the specific threat signatures that the destroyers presented. Starting the process early would give them maximum flexibility, but it would also reveal their capabilities to the enemy before the actual engagement began. Begin cascade preparation sequence, Chen ordered. All clusters to adaptive configuration mode. Across 3 astronomical units of space, the defense grid began to transform itself. Component clusters that had maintained stable configurations for months suddenly started reconfiguring their internal connections, optimizing for combat conditions that the coordination AI anticipated based on destroyer behavioral patterns. The process was visible to anyone with decent sensors, and Chen knew that the destroyers would detect the changes. But she also knew that understanding what they were seeing would be impossible for entities that thought in terms of conventional military technology. Admiral, reported the sensor technician, the destroyers are responding to our preparations. They're launching scout probes to analyze our defensive configurations. This was expected. The destroyers had defeated every galactic defense system by first analyzing their operational patterns and then developing specific countermeasures. But Chen was counting on humanity's unconventional approach to confuse that analytical process. Let them look, she said calmly. They won't understand what they're seeing until it's too late. The scout probes arrived 4 hours later. Sleek biomechanical constructs that moved through the defense grid like curious predators examining unfamiliar prey. Their sensors swept across cluster after cluster, recording energy signatures, weapon configurations, and defensive patterns. But what the probes discovered defied their analytical algorithms. Each cluster they examined operated on different principles, used different technologies, and maintained different connection protocols. There was no consistent pattern to analyze, no standard configuration to counter. The scout probes are having trouble categorizing our systems, Rosa reported with satisfaction. Their scanning patterns keep changing as they try to make sense of what they're seeing. More importantly, the coordination AI was learning from the scout probes' scanning techniques. Every sensor sweep provided information about destroyer analytical methods, allowing the defense grid to optimize its configuration specifically to confuse enemy targeting systems. Admiral, the lead destroyer is preparing to enter our engagement range, Lieutenant Commander Park announced. Distance, 2 astronomical units and closing. Chen felt her heart rate increase as the moment of truth approached. All the salvage operations, all the innovative engineering, all the political negotiations had led to this moment. Either humanity's unconventional approach would prove superior to the destroyer's adaptive capabilities, or Earth would join the list of civilizations that had fallen to the ancient enemy. All stations, prepare for combat engagement, she ordered. Coordination system to full tactical mode. The response from the defense grid was immediate and profound. The cascade preparation that had been building for hours suddenly crystallized into a network configuration that no galactic military theorist had ever imagined. Component clusters that had been functioning as independent units suddenly linked into tactical formations that could share power, coordinate targeting, and redistribute damage across multiple nodes. The first destroyer entered engagement range exactly 16 hours after the preparation sequence had begun. The biomechanical ship was enormous even by galactic standards, its hull stretching for kilometers and bristling with weapons that had vaporized entire fleets. "Target acquired," reported the weapons coordination officer. "All grid segments report ready for engagement. Begin the attack," Chen ordered, knowing that this moment would determine the fate of human civilization. The defense grid's opening salvo was unlike anything in recorded galactic military history. Instead of directing concentrated firepower at a single target, the cascade system triggered a coordinated attack that involved hundreds of component clusters simultaneously. Salvaged mining lasers, repurposed communication arrays, and modified cargo manipulators all fired in perfect synchronization, their individual beams converging and amplifying each other through cascade effects that multiplied their combined power exponentially. The destroyer's response was immediate and devastating. Its biomechanical hull reconfigured itself to present adaptive armor that should have deflected or absorbed the incoming energy beams. Weapons turrets emerged from hidden recesses and returned fire with exotic energy weapons that had proven unstoppable against conventional defenses, but the controlled cascade system had been designed specifically to handle this kind of adaptive response. As the destroyer's countermeasures activated, the coordination AI triggered cascade effects that redirected the incoming enemy fire through the defense grid's power distribution network, transforming the destroyer's own weapons into additional ammunition for humanity's counterattack. "Direct hit on the destroyer's primary hull section," reported the sensor technician, his voice filled with amazement. "But Admiral, we're also showing massive power increases throughout the grid. The enemy's weapons are actually making our system stronger." This was the controlled cascade system working exactly as designed. The destroyer's attacks, which should have crippled human defenses, were instead being absorbed and redirected back as enhanced counterattacks. The more powerful the enemy's assault, the more devastating humanity's response became. The destroyer adapted quickly, shifting its weapon configurations and trying different attack patterns. But every adaptation was met by corresponding changes in the defense grid's cascade responses. The coordination AI learned from each enemy modification and implemented countermeasures faster. The three destroyers converged on the defense grid like ancient titans awakening from millennial sleep, their biomechanical hulls gleaming with malevolent purpose as they prepared to unleash the combined firepower that had devastated 12 star systems. Admiral Chen watched the tactical display with the calm intensity of someone who understood that the next few minutes would determine whether humanity joined the ranks of galactic civilization or became another footnote in the destroyer's catalog of conquered species. "All three targets entering optimal engagement range," reported Lieutenant Commander Park, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "Distance to lead target 1.2 astronomical units. Secondary and tertiary targets at 1.4 and 1.6 AU respectively." The controlled cascade system had been preparing for this moment throughout the first engagement, analyzing the defeated destroyer's tactical patterns and extrapolating strategies for multiple target scenarios. Chief Engineer Delgado monitored the coordination AI's preparation sequences from her station, watching as the defense grid transformed itself into a configuration that existed nowhere in galactic military theory. "Admiral, the coordination system is requesting permission to implement Cascade Protocol Omega," Rosa announced, her tone carrying both excitement and appropriate caution. Chen felt a momentary hesitation. Cascade Protocol Omega was their ultimate theoretical framework, designed to handle the worst-case scenario of coordinated destroyer assault. It would push the controlled cascade system beyond all tested parameters, creating cascade effects so complex that even human engineers couldn't fully predict their outcomes. "Explain the risks," Chen ordered. "The protocol will trigger simultaneous cascade effects across the entire defense grid," Rosa replied. "Every component cluster will become part of a single coordinated weapons system. If it works, we'll have firepower equivalent to a galactic battle fleet. If it fails, we'll lose the entire grid in a cascade collapse that we can't control." Chen looked around the command center at the faces of officers and engineers who had devoted months of their lives to building humanity's defense from salvaged materials and unconventional thinking. These people had already achieved the impossible by creating a weapons system that could defeat one destroyer. Now they were proposing to attempt something that transcended impossible and entered the realm of the miraculous. Rosa, what's your professional assessment of Protocol Omega's probability of success? Rosa considered the question with the careful precision that had made her Earth's foremost salvage engineer. Based on theoretical models and extrapolation from our successful tests, I estimate a 73% chance of successful implementation. But Admiral, the consequences of failure are total system loss. And the consequences of not implementing the protocol? Probable defeat and the destruction of the outer colonies. Chen made the decision that would echo through galactic history. Implement Cascade Protocol Omega. All stations prepare for maximum engagement. The defense grid's response to the activation command was immediately visible across 3 astronomical units of space. Component clusters that had been operating as semi-independent units suddenly linked into a single unified network, their individual cascade effects merging into a pattern of energy flow that resembled the neural networks of some vast cosmic brain. The transformation was so dramatic that it triggered alarms on every monitoring station within 50 light-years. Galactic Council observers watched in amazement as humanity's primitive defense system reorganized itself into something that defied every established principle of military engineering. Cascade Protocol Omega fully implemented, Rosa reported, her voice filled with awe as she watched the coordination AI manage energy flows across a network more complex than some planetary ecosystems, all clusters showing optimal integration. The system is ready for coordinated engagement. The 3 destroyers detected the change immediately and responded with the adaptive intelligence that had made them seemingly unstoppable. Their biomechanical hulls reconfigured for maximum offensive capability while their weapon systems analyzed the new energy patterns emanating from the human defense grid. What they discovered should have been impossible. According to their accumulated tactical database, the humans had created a weapon system that appeared to violate the fundamental principles of energy conservation by generating more output than input. Their scanning algorithms couldn't identify the mechanism that made such impossible efficiency feasible. Enemy targets are attempting coordinated attack pattern designation Alpha 7, announced the sensor technician. All 3 destroyers firing simultaneously. The assault that followed would have obliterated any conventional defense system ever built. 3 streams of exotic energy, each one capable of destroying a planet, converged on the defense grid with the combined force of stellar collapse. The biomechanical weapons that had proven unstoppable against galactic military technology unleashed their full, destructive potential against humanity's improvised defenses. The controlled cascade system's response redefined the concept of impossible. Instead of trying to block or deflect the incoming attacks, Cascade Protocol Omega triggered the most complex energy redistribution event in recorded history. The 3 destroyer weapons, which should have vaporized hundreds of component clusters, were instead captured by cascade effects and channeled through the entire defense grid simultaneously. But the coordination AI had learned from the previous engagement and implemented modifications that the destroyers couldn't anticipate. Instead of simply redirecting enemy attacks back at their sources, the Cascade network used the incoming energy to trigger a phenomenon that human engineers had discovered by accident during their final tests. Cascade amplification. Every component cluster in the defense grid became both a weapons platform and an energy amplifier, taking the redirected destroyer attacks and increasing their power through controlled cascade effects that multiplied destructive potential exponentially. The exotic energy that the destroyers had launched at humanity returned to them amplified by factors that violated conventional physics. Direct hits on all 3 targets, reported Lieutenant Commander Park, his voice barely containing his amazement. But Admiral, our power readings are off the scale. The cascade effects are generating energy levels that shouldn't be possible. The tactical display showed the results of humanity's counterattack with crystalline clarity. All 3 destroyers had sustained massive damage to their primary weapon systems and propulsion networks. The biomechanical hulls that had shrugged off the most powerful weapons in galactic arsenal were showing catastrophic structural failures from attacks powered by their own redirected energy. But the cascade effects weren't finished. The coordination AI had discovered something during the engagement that would revolutionize galactic understanding of advanced physics Cascade effects could create stable energy loops that continued generating power long after the initial input had been consumed. "Admiral, the cascade amplification is self-sustaining," Rosa announced, her engineering mind struggling to comprehend what her instruments were telling her. "The system is maintaining power levels above input threshold through some kind of quantum recursion effect." This meant that the defense grid was now generating more energy than it was consuming, powered by cascade effects that created energy rather than simply redistributing it. The destroyer's own attacks had been transformed into a permanent power source that made humanity's weapons progressively more dangerous with each passing moment. The 3 destroyers attempted to withdraw from engagement range, but the controlled cascade system had anticipated this tactical response. Component clusters that had been dormant during the initial engagement suddenly activated as pursuit units, using the cascade-amplified power to launch attacks across distances that exceeded the range of conventional galactic weapons. All 3 destroyer targets showing critical system failures, reported the sensor technician. "Their biomechanical hulls are collapsing from cascade-induced energy overloads, Admiral." Chen watched the tactical display as 3 threats that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia disintegrated under assault from humanity's improvised weapons system. The destroyers that had seemed unstoppable were being defeated by salvaged space junk and human engineering creativity. "Admiral," called the communications officer, "we're receiving priority transmissions from 17 different galactic civilizations. They're all requesting immediate technical briefings on our defensive capabilities." The irony wasn't lost on Chen. For months, those same civilizations had dismissed humanity's unconventional approach as primitive and dangerous. Now, with the destroyer threat eliminated, they suddenly wanted to understand how humans had achieved what their most advanced technology had failed to accomplish. "Tell them that Earth will be happy to share our defensive innovations through proper diplomatic channels," Chen replied, "after we've completed our post-engagement analysis." The engagement officially ended 23 minutes after Cascade Protocol Omega had been implemented. The 3 destroyers that had threatened the outer colonies were reduced to expanding clouds of biomechanical debris, their adaptive capabilities overwhelmed by cascade effects that defied their analytical algorithms.